Hello and welcome to a little mini special, a history lesson, if you will. And today's history lesson is with Grotti. We're going to start out here. Now, Grotti have made some of the greatest supercars and sports cars of all time. It's their bread and butter. But you also need to make money, so to supplement their income, they also made smaller hatchbacks and sedans from time to time throughout the 20th century. But their strangest moneymaker was a licensing deal they made to sell their four-door sedan to the Russians. And this is what they came up with. The Rune 1200. But to the west, they called it the Cheburek. Now, I gotta be straight. This car is hot garbage. In fact, the coolest thing about it is that it has a dash cam on it from the factory because there's so many insurance scams in the Eastern Bloc. It's not a brilliant car. The suspension is so bouncy, I'm pretty sure it's just riding on the leaf springs. The transmission is clunky, the engine is sluggish, it's not very quick, it's not exactly a gorgeous vehicle to look at, and the build quality is shocking. And yet, it has sold over 14 million units, making it one of the best-selling cars of all time. So today, I want to find out why. And we're going to start answering that question with an anti-tank ditch. Like, this is technically a reservoir, but it can simulate an anti-tank ditch for the time being, okay? Now, these are used to stop armored assaults with relatively little capital input. Okay, it's very simple to make and it's very effective, as I shall now demonstrate. Yeah, you see, it didn't go very well. It just stops dead in its track and it is completely stuck and vulnerable to all sorts of explosive death. But in the Soviet Union, you fight for Mother Russia, with Mother Russia, and you contribute in every way you can in this total war economy. So, if you were to build a bridge across the reservoir, I mean anti-tank ditch, with your runes, with your Chebureks, well, how will it fare if you drive across them? These are the questions you have to know. This tests that terrible suspension, and I gotta be honest, it may be riding on the leaf springs, but they're tough little buggers because this thing drove over it. Nicely done. So let's go a little bit bigger. Yeah. This is a 90s American SUV. It's big, it's heavy, it's got a thumping great V8. It's also a little bit wide. Gotta be a little careful here, but it is nicely across the anti-tank ditch. Piece of cake. So let's move on to some bigger hardware. Yes, the old-fashioned / still in production, still in use today, Soviet Union supply trucks for the war effort. This is what's really gonna go over there. The general car will cross later when they've already got a bridge, but this thing needs to resupply the front lines ASAP. So, if this can't get over, then the war is lost. Turning radius, not brilliant. In the Russian supply truck, there we go. You saw nothing. Now this is quite wide. I wouldn't imagine wanting to cross this in a battle being shot at, because this does require quite a lot of careful precision. There we go, look at that. Nicely done, Chebureks. You have just saved your comrades on the front. But there is one more vehicle that needs to get across. The latest in Russian military advancements in armored vehicles. The half-track. This is a heavy beast. It's wide. It's big. Oh, this is gonna be a bit tricky. It's going to be tricky just to fit. I'm pretty sure the front wheels are going to actually be on the windscreens. But there you go. This will be Again, won't want to do this in a battle. Be very cautious, very concerned, very calculated. Oh, yep. Oh, there it goes. The windscreen. Just go over it. Just go over it. Yep. Ha ha ha! Look at that. The half-track has crossed the Cheburek Bridge. And you know what? I bet you, I saw those Chebureks. They're actually in pretty good shape, I think. Yeah, you know, considering this drove a bunch of vehicles over their roof lines. I mean, that one's missing its, suspension's collapsed on the white one. But otherwise, some broken glass, some damaged suspension, and these things are in pretty much perfect nick. I mean, they're practically nuclear-proof. So we know the Cheburek is a very tough vehicle. We figured that out. But what about speed? Well, if you wanted to go into, an ally of the West, you always go with the JDM Export Annis ZR350, a proper rotary sports car, one of the best sports cars ever made. I love this thing to death. This one right here is mine! It may have been finicky, the rotary engine, but I'll tell you what, for power density and performance, this thing was uncompromisingly a masterpiece. So much so that the Soviet Union decided to buy the rights to the engine and make it themselves. And they put it, experimentally, in this. Their staff car Cheburek for their high-ranking officers. Frankly, I don't know what's a more unreliable combination, a Cheburek or a rotary. It's a wild idea, and it really didn't work. It was actually a pretty quick car, I must concede. Again, very power-dense engine, even with their relatively rudimentary technology. But it also did that a lot. Yeah. Maybe we should just forget this ever happened and move on to my reinforcement points. Group B rallying was amazing. It will still be legendary long into the future, and the Vapid GB200 was one of the pinnacles of that series. Mid-engine, turbocharged, four-wheel drive rocket ship of a Vapid. Their first mid-engine production car. It's a masterpiece. It may not be as successful as the Obe Omnis, but it's still an incredible car in its own right. The Soviet Union, meanwhile, made this. This isn't just any Cheburek. This is my Cheburek. I own this 1985 Group B rally car, and that gives me some unique insight in that it is kind of terrible. I know this does not help my point at all in defending this vehicle, but it understeers around a corner, and when you're trying to exit, it gets chronic understeer. So, oversteer and understeer almost simultaneously in the same corner is something truly special. In fact, while I do love a quirky vehicle, this thing is so slow compared to its peers that this barnyard creation in a shed might legitimately be faster than it. And that is because of the tuning scene. You see, when the Soviet Union collapsed in the 1990s, all of these cars came onto the international market, and the international market came to them, which means you could do things with them that worked. This car has a turbocharger that works and deploys its power effectively and immediately. And combine that with the skinny rear tires, and you get quite an oversteery little car, Now, yes, this one is taking a bit of a piss with the body kit, shall we say. It's definitely bolt-on. Maybe duct tape on is a better word for it. It's clever. Well, it's clever, it's creative, it's what I love about cars. This vehicle, since it is so generic and bland and, well, a product of communism, it means that you can paint your personality onto it incredibly easily. And I have to show off my favorite party piece of this DIY build. It perfectly suits my personality. Oh yes, this can set fire to itself quite easily, I would imagine. Nothing like sticking cardboard around your fire-spitting exhaust. What could possibly go wrong with that? This thing is a riot. I love it to death. I absolutely love modified Chebureks. Especially ones like this where you implement Western technology with Soviet, I say efficiency, simplicity is probably the best word to describe these cars. And it doesn't end with cardboard kits and turbos, because the modification scene is vast. Now in the West, we have some truly incredible mod shops, and sky is the limit creativity. But behind the Iron Curtain, that creativity wasn't allowed. You had to fit in just like everyone else. So cars like these weren't legal. You couldn't own them, you couldn't build them, and even if you could, even if you wanted to, you couldn't because the technology, the manufacturing capability didn't exist for it. You had to smuggle it in. But when it fell, when the Iron Curtain released, you got cars like this. They're very clean, and they're actually pretty darn good looking. I can't even make fun of it. It is a legitimately clean, stylish, boxy relic of the 70s with Western, modern additions to it. And this is just one of many. It's absolutely fantastic, truly sky is the limit creativity. Unfortunately, since there were over 13 million made, most Chebureks look exactly like this. Yeah, Soviet build quality, Soviet rust proofing, it just didn't work. The things were incredibly unreliable. Yes, you can make them look good. Yes, even the Soviets can make them quick-ish. But 99% of the time, this is what you got with a Cheburek. So, let's fight fire with equally terrible fire, and fight with a Western car from the time period. Now, this is an autocross stage. The Cheburek from the 70s versus an American car from the 70s, East versus West. And no, the vehicles were not that impressive, if I'm honest. This is a Bravado. It's 47 miles long, it weighs as much as the ship I'm currently driving on. It's not very powerful, big V8, small horsepower figure, so let's just see what it can do. Not really the ideal case for this vehicle, a little bit of handbrake there, because this is quite long, trying to weave it through here. My god, I almost hit the tires, that would be a penalty. And I don't want to cost myself any time, this matters for national pride. Oh god, turn please, Yeah, but it's not a very responsive vehicle, it sort of wallows through corners. Yep, almost there. One more corner to go, and across the line. Oh dear, that was something fierce, wasn't it? Well, surely communism can't be any better. This does have weight behind it. It is a lot smaller, it's more nimble, it's lighter, but it is also a rust bucket from 70s Russia, so here we go. Acceleration is actually pretty good compared to the Greenwood. Now, nimble and tight through here, turning radius is actually pretty solid. No power steering, but the Bravado didn't have it either, so lightweight, small tires is key here. It's not going to be a blistering time, but I can already tell this thing is so much faster than these corners. I have so much more confidence because it's smaller. Here we go across the line. Yeah, to be honest, I don't think we need a timer for that one. That was pretty obvious which vehicle was faster. What does that say about America, though? What it says is that weight is everything, and that the 70s American cars were just as bad as the Cheburek, but for different reasons. And that means the Cheburek is in a weird place. It can be a brilliant car when given the creativity, but 99% of the vehicles were not given that creativity, which means, despite everything, they were pretty awful. But they do have a cult following, do have an appeal behind them for being quirky Soviet vehicles, the polar opposite of an Italian sports car. Pure function over form, no more, no less, no fancy amenities of any kind, just brutal simplicity and machinery. And there is a beauty to that in itself. The effort to try to make a car, given the limitations behind the curtain, is admirable. So does it deserve a cult following? Does it deserve to be highly praised and well regarded as a car of the past and a quirky feature in the annals of history? Yes, it does, because even disasters and wreckmobiles have their place in the automotive heart of the world.